classes today. It's Professor T. How are you today? It's Thursday, bit gloomy outside, and I realized the only way to read this book properly is to use my glasses. Do you remember Faith Ringgold Part 2? This is Faith Ringgold Part 3. I think we will do 2 more parts before I'm able to finish the book. If you remember, Faith Ringgold was talking about how she makes her art. These quilts we were talking about, and she says, I combine real people from my life and things I've done with influences from art history. So her art is narrative, it tells a story, but it's part fiction, part nonfiction. I'm going to repeat one page so we're all remembering what happened. In Dancing at the Louvre, I tell a story about a friend of William Marie's named Marcia, who takes her, along with her own 3 children, to the Louvre in Paris, which is probably the most famous art museum in the world. By the way, the children in the picture are really my grandchildren, and Marcia is my daughter, but not in the story. So there's her quilt, part fiction, part nonfiction. And we were looking at this painting, which I know you recognize. Here's the painting again. What is that painting? It's a kind of joke, you know. I mean, nobody but a very gauche American would dance at the Louvre. If you want to find out what the joke is, you have to know something about art history. So Faith Ringgold is telling us that normal people don't dance at a famous art museum. I'm going to read this sidebar for you. It tells us information about Mona Lisa, which is one of the most famous works in history. Leonardo da Vinci, 1452 to 1519, was not only an artist, but also an inventor. I know you know that. We read a book about it. It's right here. He recorded the ideas in sketchbooks in his notebooks. And if you remember, he writes backwards. Remember? That's the first story I read for this blog. I wonder if I could write backwards. I wonder if you could write backwards. Leonardo expertly used the new medium of oil paint and the techniques of perspective, use of light and shadow, and symmetrical composition. Can you see how he used a triangle to focus your eye directly on the Mona Lisa? Trace from the Mona Lisa's head down one arm, across, and up. I'm going to show you that triangle. Here we go. The top of the triangle is where the greatest focus is in the painting. That's a composition trick. But it's the Mona Lisa's smile that is so mysterious and has fascinated people over so many centuries. What do you think Mona Lisa is trying to tell us? With that smile and with these eyes that seem to be looking at us no matter if we move the page over here, she's still looking at you, or over here. Both ways she's looking straight at you. How could that be? Now we're going to move on to another place. A thing I've always wanted to do was paint in the French post-impressionist manner, and in this one I did. William Marie entertains a group of famous African-American women who are going all over the world having quilting bees. Here they are in Arles. I love this. Here they are in Arles, where a very famous painter made a lot of famous artwork. His name was, we're going to skip this page for a minute, Vincent van Gogh. You may have heard of him. I mentioned him with The Starry Night. In the sunflower quilting bee at Arles, the Dutch painter Vincent van Gogh has come to see the black women sewing in the sunflower fields. "Who is this strange-looking man?" they ask. "He's a grand painter," William Maurice tells them, though he's greatly troubled in his mind. The women ask William Maria why she came to France. Is this a natural setting for a black woman? William Maria replies that she came to France to seek opportunity because it was not possible for her to be an artist in the United States. The women answer, "We are all artists. Piecing is our art. We brought it straight from Africa. We did it after a hard day's work in the fields to keep our sanity and our beds warm and to bring beauty to our lives." What does she mean by piecing? Piecing, the quilt, is many pieces. Piecing is putting those pieces together, right? Now on this page, she has a number of famous African Americans who I will name. This is Sojourner Truth, who spoke out against slavery and for women's rights. Born in 1797, died in 1883. Down here, we have Madam C.J. Walker. 1867 she was born, developed a hair straightening preparation and became the first self-made American-born woman millionaire. I love it. Employing over 3,000 people. She left more than half of her fortune to charitable and educational causes. Who's this? Ida Wells, born in 1862, died in 1931, very pretty, was a journalist who exposed the horrors of lynching in the South through writing and lecturing. She founded anti-lynching societies and women's clubs throughout the United States. These are very impressive people, and I can understand why Faith Ringgold put them in this book. Up here we have Fannie Lou Hamer, braved beatings and imprisonment to register thousands of people to vote. Born in 1917. Over here, Harriet Tubman, 1820 to 1913, brought over 300 slaves to freedom on the Underground Railroad during the time of slavery. During the Civil War, she served as a spy for the Union Army. Harriet Tubman, you probably know her. Down here, Rosa Parks. Of course you know Rosa Parks. 1913 she was born, was arrested in 1955 for refusing to give up her seat on a segregated bus to a white man, which helped launch the civil rights movement. You have a school in Patterson named after Rosa Parks. Mary McLeod Bethune was an educator who founded a college for Black Americans and was a special advisor to Franklin Roosevelt, born in 1875 and died in 1955. Ella Baker, 1905 to 1986, improved housing, jobs, and consumer education through her active involvement in many civil rights movements. Why do you think Faith Ringgold wants you to know about these people in her book about her artwork? Faith Ringgold was a woman and an African American, and in the time she was making art, many galleries would not show female art, and especially not African American female art. So by being an artist, she was herself a trailblazer. Even if that was not her original intention, she became a trailblazer as she faced the discrimination that was in the society at that time And some of that discrimination is still around today, as we know. Not all of it, but some. Okay, in the Sunflower Quilting Bee at Arles, the Dutch painter Vincent van Gogh has come back to see the women. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm reading the same page. Now we have Who's Afraid of Aunt Jemima? Who is Aunt Jemima? I want to use my art to express my feelings and ideas about the world. You know, we create stereotypes. Certain people are good, certain people are bad, certain people are lazy. In Who's Afraid of Aunt Jemima, my first story quilt, I retold the story of Aunt Jemima, who was supposed to be a stereotype of the black woman, as a cook, a servant, a maid taking care of her employer's children. In this work, I turned Aunt Jemima into Jemima Blakey, a successful businesswoman. So what does it take for people to realize that we don't have to be all alike, and that for people to be different is wonderful and fine? It does not affect your life at all that somebody else is a different religion, a different color, different race, eats different kinds of food, dresses in different kinds of clothes, and so on. I completely agree with what Faith Ringgold is saying. So she took the stereotype of Aunt Jemima, and I remember Aunt Jemima on the boxes when I grew up, and she turned Aunt Jemima into a successful businesswoman. Of course, America has always been a multicultural society. First the Native Americans were here, then came everybody else. And since nobody's leaving, I guess that's the way it's going to have to be. I think that is one of the things that makes America wonderful. It takes a certain amount of growth to allow yourself to be exposed to another person's culture. You have to have a kind of readiness to accept that another person's culture is as significant to them as yours is to you. She's very wise. Here's the Who's Afraid of Aunt Jemima quilt. You can see the text and the images. It is a narrative quilt and the utilitarian artwork. Do you remember that word, utilitarian? I reached and found this pillow. It is a beautiful object, but it also has a use. Utilitarian. Here below is Crown Heights Children's History Story Quilt. Well, Crown Heights is part of Brooklyn, not too far from here. Oh, I'm almost at the end of the book. But you know what? I'm going to stop right now. It starts with Crown Heights, so that's a new part of the story. Let me see if there's anything in this book that I missed that I want to show you. Yes, let's talk about Vincent van Gogh. Vincent. He painted this very famous painting of the sunflowers. And like I was talking about yesterday, this is more expressionistic than realistic, but it's also realistic because we know what these sunflowers are, but he puts his emotion into this painting. Vincent van Gogh, 1853 to 1890, produced most of his work during a brief 10-year career. He's considered a genius for his originality, his use of brilliant colors, broken brush strokes, thick paint, and swirling lines that make his work look as if it is moving. His paintings are full of emotion. Some of his most exciting work was done in Arles, a town in southern France. He often worked day and night, turning out one masterpiece after another. Portraits, landscapes, and still lifes. Van Gogh had a very sad life. During his lifetime, he sold only one painting and was never recognized for his work. He suffered from mental illness and finally committed suicide. Is there anything Van Gogh has in common with the Willa Maria or the women who are quilting? What part of the painting looks as if it was done in Van Gogh's style? Oh, I see what they're asking you. Is this style anything like Van Gogh's style? Van Gogh in Arles was in the hospital a lot for mental illness. But what's very interesting is oftentimes people who are diagnosed with mental illness make brilliant artists. So again, whether a person has a different color or a different mentality, we're all valuable human beings. And we're all here on earth to help each other and ourselves, right? This is what we mean by diversity. Okay, I hope you have a great Thursday night, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Bye-bye.